The Monaco Diamond League men's 1500 meters is stacked. It features athletes such as Timothy Cheruiyot, Jakob Ingebrigtsen, Yared Nuguse, Elliott, Giles, Neil Gourley, Norvegilde Nordas, I've probably butchered that name, and many, many more. I took a look at the start list for this race, and the average PB of all of these athletes is 3 minutes 30. That is insane. And when we look at the current form and career of the athletes, it makes the race even more interesting. For starters, we've of course got Jakob Ingebrigtsen, current Olympic champion, 6 gold medals in the European champs just recently, world champion in the 5000 meters 2 consecutive years in a row, silver medalist 2 consecutive years in a row in the 1500, and sporting an insane 3 minutes 27 personal best in the 1500, giving him the #1 ranked position in the entire world in the 1500 meters World Athletics rankings. Although he's been injured over the winter period with an Achilles issue, he has been building back up his strength recently with things like the Prefontaine Classic, where he came second to Josh Kerr, and then having a super close race with Timothy Cheruiyot in the Oslo Diamond League, before recently storming to the finish in the European Championships. He's been steadily increasing his strength as time goes on, recovering that lost fitness from the injury he sustained in the winter. And for him, and I think for all of these runners, this is going to be the last time he races before the Olympics. He's of course been in a rivalry with Josh Kerr. Kerr of course infamously in the Budapest Championships in the 1500 meter, outkicked him in the last 200s to the shock of everyone. Beat him in the exact same way Jake Whiteman did when he pulled off that upset in 2022 in the exact same event. Both athletes were able to keep with him for the majority of the race and survive that kind of front running, winding up style that Jakob likes to do. And then they were able to outkick him in the final 200. As I mentioned, Josh Kerr and Jakob Ingebrigtsen met in the Prefontaine Classic, where again Jakob tried to front run but was overtaken in the final lap by Josh Kerr, who sprinted to victory. Jakob is always someone who wants to prove that he is the best, and I think this is his last chance to do it before the Olympics, and to put a bid for him being the favourite to win it this year. And with his front running style, you can always expect a fast and fun race. Then we move on to Timothy Cheruiyot, who's a former world champion who dominated the race when he won. He spent the majority of that race something like 15 meters ahead of the entire pack, and he basically just front ran and used his supreme fitness to beat everyone else. It wasn't even close. Probably the most dominant display of front running I've ever seen in a 1500 meter. He also went neck and neck recently with Jakob Ingebrigtsen in the Oslo Diamond League, and it took a diving finish by Jakob to eke out the victory. Timothy Cheruiyot also has an Olympic silver medal, which is just more evidence that he's one of the best 1500 meter athletes in the world right now. Then you've got Yared Nuguse, who is currently ranked second in the world in the 1500 meters by World Athletics rankings. He's also given serious competition to Jakob Ingebrigtsen before, with a personal best of 3 minutes 29 seconds. Again, I think they ran the mile in Oslo in 2022, and it was a very, very close race between them where they both ran very, very fast. Then you've got the athlete Elliott Giles, and whilst he may not be as fast or as accomplished as the other athletes I've mentioned, he's recovering from an 800 meters in the UK Olympic trials, where in the final 50 meters of the race he had a controversial collision with Josh Kerr. Now, whoever's fault you think this was, or if you think it was no one's fault, I think we can all agree it's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back from this. He's been in solid 1500 meter form, has a 3 minutes 30 personal best, and will surely be looking to avenge his loss. He missed out on the Olympic team with Whiteman gaining the discretionary spot in the 800, so I'm sure he's going to be very pissed off and looking to prove himself in his career. On a side note, if you want a little bit more detail about the collision and some analysis as to whose fault I think it was, then check out this video in the description. It got a lot more attention than I was expecting, and it was very interesting to kind of see the debate between it. From what I saw, the majority opinion, I also did a poll on this, about 50% of you were saying that it was kind of no one's fault, it was just a natural thing that happens in racing. You know, it's the final 50 meters of an 800, anything can really happen. 25% was saying it was Giles' fault, he cut Kerr off intentionally, and he was the reason the collision happened. And the other 25% was saying that Kerr was trying to force his way through a spot that wasn't really there, and is therefore responsible for the collision. As an Elliott Giles fan, I really hope he does well in this race. He's been in decent 1500 meter form, so I hope he's able to prove himself in this one. Couple of honourable mentions as well. You've got Azzedine Habs. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name wrong there. He's got a personal best of 3:29 again. For this season, he's slightly mixed in terms of form. He hasn't achieved super fast times, to be honest. He won first place in the Diamond League in Marrakesh, but otherwise hasn't seen too much success this season. You've got Niels Gourley, of course, for the British runners, floated to a comfortable finish in the UK 1500 meter Olympic trials, and has run 3 minutes 30 this season. And then you've got Nordas, I'm not going to bother pronouncing his first name, I know I'm going to butcher it. Third at the World Champs in Budapest, only finished 0.02 seconds behind Jakob Ingebrigtsen. Again, someone to keep an eye on. He hasn't had the best form in the 1500 for his past 2 races, and he hasn't really raced that distance very much recently, which is why I'm kind of putting him as an honourable mention, but definitely someone to look out for. Overall, it's a hugely stacked field, lots of big names, lots of stories, lots of rivalries, lots of people looking to prove themselves. Who do I think's going to win? Well, unfortunately, I haven't got any controversial opinion for you. I think the favourite Jakob Ingebrigtsen is going to take it. He's getting fitter all of the time, and the way that he runs his races bases everything purely on fitness. You get some runners who kind of have a sit and kick style, you know, they try and slow down the pace and then really accelerate in the final 400. These are typically the runners who are kind of an 800 meter and 1500 meter runner. They focus more on their speed. And that slower pace means some of the less fit athletes, and I say less fit, you know, relatively speaking, of course, have a chance to pull an upset, in the same way how Jake Whiteman and Josh Kerr were able to do. That being said, I think Jakob is in strong form. You look at his performance in the European Championships, it was a dominant display. And he's never one to take an off race or to take a race lightly. He's going to be going as hard and fast as he can out there. The only serious challenge I see is Timothy Cheruiyot, because he's used to that kind of front running style. As we saw with that dominant World Championship display, he's not one to sit and kick, he's going to go with Jakob. It's going to be very interesting to see those two clash. And if Cheruiyot is having a good race and Jakob isn't in perfect form, he's going to give Jakob serious problems. So I see Cheruiyot coming second, to be honest, but potentially having the chance to eke out first place. The Goose, of course, has a solid shot of medaling. I'd say maybe third or even second place if Cheruiyot doesn't do too well. Of course, he's got that second place ranking for a reason. He's an absolute monster on the track, so he's going to get my pick for third place. But of course, we never really know. I think the 1500 meter is one of those races where it's a bit more based on your sort of raw fitness, especially with the way it's run these days. You know, as I say, the 800 meters is a lot more volatile. There are a lot more different things that can happen. It's a much faster race, you know, trips, falls, you know, knowing when to time your kick, it's much more important than with the 1500. But if you want to find out what's going to happen in this race, it's at 9:30 PM GMT and it's available on BBC Sport. For you Americans, that's 4:30 PM EST and is available on NBC Sports. I'm going to try and get a video out a few hours after the race, just giving my thoughts and basic analysis there. But it's going to be quite late here, obviously 9:30, so it may take a day or so to really get out. On a side note as well, that Paris 800 meter is crazy. 3 141 runners and all of them are racing in the next 800 meters in Monaco. Of course, it is a little bit questionable. You know, people have pointed out the amount of progression. When you look at Gabriel Tawal's World Athletics page, his progression in the 800 seems fairly linear. Between 2020 and 2023, he was running consistent 144s. Kind of seemed to be in a plateau. Maybe his genetic peak, wasn't really able to go much faster. And then suddenly this year, he just breaks out with a 141. An over 2-second PB is huge in the 800 meters. And achieving that within a year in the elite level, understandably has made people very suspicious. The winner, Cheruiyot, also looks suspicious as well. He also had fairly steady progression to begin with, but this year he smashed his personal best by over 1.5 seconds in this race, which once again is a huge drop in his times. And they did that only within 1 year, which is a huge level of improvement at the elite level. It's really sad that when we have such a breakout performance from 3 athletes, the first thing that we go to is, oh, PEDs, you know, they're doping. But unfortunately, that is just the state of the sport. And I'd rather that we weren't naive and said it how it looks, rather than trying to plug our ears when it's quite likely that these guys are doping, unfortunately. But of course we don't know that. But regardless, thank you very much for watching the video, guys. Will Jakob win this race? Will Cheruiyot steal it? Or will there be a dark horse? You know, you've got plenty of 329 runners there, and someone could just take on the race and have the performance of the lifetime. But thank you again for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.